The reason you have memory isn't to remember the past. The reason you have memory is to not do the same stupid things again in the future. There's a hierarchy of memes. There's some that are memorable for a while and then you forget them, and then there's some that are way more memorable, and then right at the top there are memes that you will never forget. Then the question is, why would you never forget them? There's a reason for that, and the answer is something like, well, they're structured such that they're maximally memorable. But then that begs the question, why are they maximally memorable? Why is it that your memory is structured to not forget exactly that? And that's where you get tangled into the evolutionary arguments, like, well, your memory evolved. It's actually a tool. And so you remember some things and you don't remember other things. And your memory has a shape, and these stories fit into that shape. And so at minimum, the stories have evolved to adapt to your memory. Now I would say, since your memory has evolved to adapt to the world, that implies that the stories have evolved to adapt to the world. So it's like, well, why do you draw the boundaries so that the top 1% are people that aren't you? If it's not envy, if you're doing okay, I mean, you're doing okay with an average working class salary. You're doing okay. I'm not saying you're doing great. You're not starving, you've got heat, you've got air conditioning, you've got access to electronic technology, you've got some ability to move forward into the future. So you're doing all right, and by historical standards, you're doing damn fine. So why all of a sudden is the 1% that you're envious of only those people who are richer than you, when you're also part of the 1% worldwide, if that's not envy? So I know who the rich is. The rich is always someone who has more money than me. That's who the rich is. I don't put myself in that category, especially if I'm pursuing this victim mentality. And then the other part of the victim mentality is, well, let's say you can have a meaningful life by adopting responsibility, but it's a heavy load. You got to be awake and alert and on your feet and moving towards something difficult. You have to have some self-control, and you have to sacrifice in the present so that the future is better. It's complex. You have to integrate a lot. And when you take on some responsibility, your life has meaning. You think, I want a meaningful life. It's like, maybe you do, if you're willing to take on the responsibility. What's the alternative? Well, to garner a lot of unearned sympathy for your victimization position, and to at the same time take down the people who are willing to take more responsibility than you. It's a nasty game. And I do believe that. I believe that the world is constructed so that each person plays a vital role. And so every time that someone gets their act together, it's like, great, that's going to have way more positive effect than you think, and stave off an awful lot of trouble. Because someone who goes bad can do an unbelievable amount of damage. Dozens of people every night who have told me that over the last couple of years, their lives have been transformed. They've gone from a bad place, where they were really lost and nihilistic. They've decided that they were going to do something with their life. I tweeted out something today that some kid wrote me. He said 2 years ago, he didn't have any friends. He didn't have an intimate relationship. He didn't know where he was going in his life. He didn't have a job. Like, he was just, nothing was going for him. And he's doing a philosophy degree. He's in his second year. He has a good job. He's got a girlfriend. He's got friends that care for him. It's like he's put his life right together. And so I hear this sort of story from people all the time. People stop me on the street and tell me this, which is lovely, right? To go to a city you've never been to. This happens to me all the time. I'll be walking down the street. Someone will come up and say, I'm sorry that I'm bothering you. And they're not, because people are very polite. They've been very polite to me. They say, I wasn't in such a good place a year ago, 2 years ago. I've been trying to put my life together. I've been listening to your lectures, and here's a bunch of things that are way better for me. It's like, right on, man. The more of that, the better. And I think that's the right way forward, which is why I don't really regard myself as a political person. And it's so interesting to see the response to people after my talks, say, or as a consequence of watching my lectures. I have people come up to me every night, because I talk to about 150 people a night after the talks. And so many of them are happy because they've put their lives on firm foundation, because they found a little bit of encouragement in my lectures, saying, look, it's good for you to go take your place in the world. Have some ambition. Have a vision, have a goal, have a strategy. Try to be a good person, not because it's your duty precisely, because that's the proper way to live. We're in danger of undermining all of that, and it's not good for people. One of the things that I've really learned, for example, recently is that learned to articulate better, is that there's a very tight relationship between aspiration and responsibility. So let's say, well, the first question might be, do you need to aspire to something? And the answer is, well, yes, because you have to do something. If you just sit there, you'll die. You can't just sit there. You have to go act out in the world. Okay, so act towards what? Well, that's whatever your aspiration is. You have to have an aim. Okay, well, what should the aim be? Well, it should be something worth doing, let's say. Why do something that you don't feel is worth doing? What do you think's worth doing? Well, if you watch other people and you judge when they're doing something worthwhile, you usually judge them positively if you see that they're taking responsibility, at least for themselves. What, do you want to be completely useless so other people have to take care of you? That's pretty pathetic. And maybe you could get your act together so you're taking care of yourself and your family. And maybe you could even do better than that and take care of yourself and your family and your community. Well, good for you. That's responsibility, and that's an aim. Well, here's one of the things that's cool about that, is that your life doesn't have meaning without aspiration or an aim. Okay, so you need a hierarchy of values. There's got to be something at the top. It's got to be something important. If you don't have that, your life doesn't have any meaning. So if you criticize the hierarchy, or even the idea of hierarchy, you destroy the idea of aspiration. And then people have nothing. Well, that's not helpful. People are built for a struggle and they're built for a weight, and you want to take on a heavy burden voluntarily. See if you can put yourself together. See what you can do out in the world while you're waiting to die. It's an all-in game. It better be worthwhile. And so there's a tight relationship between responsibility and aspiration and hierarchy. And when you criticize those things, you get rid of the aspiration.